The wind was slicing through the lake, carrying the chill of early spring. Logan steadied the small aluminum boat as Madison pointed to a ripple near the stern. At first, it looked like a floating log, but then a pair of golden eyes broke the surface. A lynx, soaked to the bone, was clinging to the rubber flap along the side of their boat. Its claws dug deep into the material, and its breath came out in desperate bursts. "Oh my God, it's trying to climb up," Madison whispered, frozen in disbelief. Logan dropped his fishing rod and reached for the oar. "Don't scare her. She's exhausted." He knelt, moving slowly toward the animal. The lynx didn't snarl. She only blinked through the water dripping from her fur, making a faint, trembling sound, half hiss, half plea. The water was cold enough to numb fingers in seconds. There was no way she could stay afloat for long. Logan grabbed a rescue loop from the emergency kit, slipped it over the side, and let it rest beneath her chest. Madison unfolded an old wool blanket. Together, they lifted the lynx toward the stern. Her paws slipped once, then caught the metal edge, claws scraping. Logan gritted his teeth and pulled harder. The animal collapsed onto the boat floor with a heavy thud, trembling, water streaming off her coat. For a tense second, both humans held their breath, ready to retreat. But she didn't attack. Instead, the lynx lay there, sides heaving, eyes fixed on the distant shoreline as if begging them to follow. Madison whispered, "She's bleeding, look at her leg." Thin red lines crossed her right hind paw, not deep, but unmistakably clean cuts, like from wire. Logan noticed bits of gray mud clinging to her belly and fur, as if she had struggled through a drained marsh. "She didn't fall in here," he said quietly. "She swam to us." He reached for his radio. "Mike, this is Logan. We need you at the North Cove. You're not going to believe this." Static crackled, then a voice replied, "Copy that. I'm on my way. Don't make sudden moves." The lynx tried to stand, wobbling. She pressed her front paws against the gunwale, staring toward the reeds at the far end of the lake. Her ears flicked constantly, focused on something unseen. Then came a faint sound, barely audible through the wind. It was soft and high-pitched, like squeaking. Madison frowned. "Did you hear that?" Logan nodded. "Yeah, that came from the shore." When Mike's patrol boat arrived, the ranger took one look and froze. "Well, I'll be damned, she came to you for help." He crouched near the animal, keeping a careful distance. The lynx's gaze never wavered from the reeds. She didn't flinch at their voices, only tensed when the faint squeak came again. "That's not random," Logan said. "She's leading us somewhere." The ranger studied the shoreline through his binoculars. The reeds swayed under the wind, but something else moved among them. A slight tremor, too steady to be the breeze. "We follow her line of sight," Mike said finally. "If she made it all the way here, whatever's over there can't wait much longer." They wrapped the lynx gently in the wool blanket, letting her rest at the bow. Madison stroked the air near her face but didn't touch. The animal's breathing slowed, and a faint, rhythmic sound came from her chest. Not quite a purr, but something close, fragile and human in its vulnerability. As Logan started the motor, the faint squeaking turned into a weak cry carried by the wind. Madison turned pale. "That sounded like kittens." Logan exchanged a glance with Mike. The ranger tightened his grip on the rail. "Then we better move. Now." By the time the sun dipped below the tree line, the temperature had fallen close to freezing. Mike's truck headlights swept across the narrow dirt road as Logan and Madison followed behind in their car, hauling the small rescue crate that now held the exhausted lynx. They had wrapped her in blankets, leaving the door slightly open for air. She barely moved, but every few minutes her ears twitched toward the lake's northern shore. Mike adjusted his thermal monocular and scanned the darkness ahead. The shoreline was a maze of reeds and slick mud, the kind of place where boats weren't supposed to dock. The ranger muttered, "If she came from this direction, something's wrong out here." They reached the old marina at the end of the cove. Most of the dock lights were out, only one flickering bulb over the boathouse door. A hand-painted sign read, "Private property. No trespassing." Madison looked uneasy. "This place gives me chills." Logan lifted the crate carefully from the truck bed. The lynx lifted her head and made a faint rasping sound, staring into the tall grass that bordered the marina's floodgate. Mike's radio crackled. "Carter here," said a voice dripping with impatience. "You're not bringing people onto my docks at night, are you?" The ranger frowned. "We've got a wounded wildcat, and there may be offspring nearby. I need access." "Look, Mike," Carter replied. "It's after hours. I've got insurance concerns. Handle your wildlife problem in the morning." Mike's tone hardened. If there are trapped animals, we're not waiting. He clicked the radio off before Carter could respond. They moved through the shadows, following the lynx's low growl as she stirred within the crate. When Logan opened the door slightly, she stepped out, limping but determined. Her nose lifted, catching a scent. Then, without hesitation, she started toward the flooded trail that ran behind the marina. "Let her lead," Mike whispered. "Stay behind me." The ground was soft and cold, every step sinking into mud that smelled of decay and fuel. Madison slipped once, catching herself on a rotting fence post. "Careful," Logan warned. "These wires are everywhere." He wasn't exaggerating. Thin metallic loops glinted in the beam of Mike's flashlight, stretched across the trail like tripwires. They were snares, homemade and illegal. Mike crouched beside one and cursed under his breath. "Someone's been trapping here. These are fresh." He photographed them, marking GPS coordinates on his phone. The lynx stopped at a bend in the trail, tail twitching. Beyond the reeds, faint sounds echoed, a rhythmic splash, then two high-pitched cries. Madison froze. "That's them," she whispered. "The cubs." Logan aimed his flashlight toward the source. In the distance, half submerged under branches, lay what looked like a beaver lodge. The outer layer of sticks had collapsed, and water from the drainage pipe was slowly rising around it. Mike scanned it with his thermal monocular. Two bright shapes flickered inside the mound, small, shivering, alive. He exhaled sharply. "They're there." But the water's moving in fast. A loud splash behind them made Madison turn. The floodgate had opened slightly, releasing a slow surge into the channel. "They're draining upstream," Mike said grimly. "The level's going to rise here all night." Logan wiped his face with a wet sleeve. "We can't wait till morning." "I know," Mike said. "But if we go in now, it's too dark to see what's beneath. And that mud will suck you under in seconds." The lynx hissed softly, pacing at the edge of the reeds. Her gaze darted between the humans and the half-flooded lodge. Her cubs cried again, weaker this time. Mike raised his radio once more. "Dispatch, this is Ranger Holt. We need Sheriff Parker and a portable floodlight at North Marina. Possible wildlife entanglement and illegal traps." The reply came after a delay. "Copy that. ETA 40 minutes. While they waited, the wind shifted, bringing a metallic scent from the water, oil mixed with decay. Logan walked to the edge, shining his light over the black surface. Small ripples spread outward from the lodge. "If that gate keeps draining, they'll drown before morning." Mike nodded slowly. "Then we'll have to work before sunrise." When Sheriff Parker arrived, the clock on his dash read 2:10 a.m. His heavy boots splashed through the mud as he surveyed the traps. "Jesus, Carter's been warned about this before," he muttered. "He lets contractors dump old fencing here. Guess someone got creative." They documented every snare and wire, photographing and bagging a few for evidence. Madison stayed close to the lynx, who crouched beside the waterline, eyes fixed on the dark mound. Parker looked up from his notes. "So, what's the move?" Mike glanced toward the lake, where a faint gray line of dawn was forming. "We suit up before sunrise. We'll go in with ropes, boards, and dry suits. If we wait another hour, it might be too late." Madison swallowed hard. "How cold is that water?" "Cold enough to knock you out in minutes," Logan answered quietly. "But those cubs don't have that long." The lynx let out a deep, trembling growl that cut through the wind. No one spoke for several seconds. Finally, Mike broke the silence. "All right," he said, staring toward the dark shape in the reeds. "We go in at first light. No mistakes." First light came as a thin band of gray, the kind that tricks you into thinking it is warmer than it is. Frost skinned the reeds, and the air burned in the lungs. Mike laid out the plan in a low voice while Logan and Madison wriggled into dry suits beside the truck. Ropes were coiled, carabiners checked twice, the wide plank from the marina's broken dock repurposed as a ramp. The lynx paced in a tight arc near the waterline, tail low, ears flat. She kept glancing toward the beaver lodge and then back to the humans, as if measuring whether to trust them again. Madison knelt and spoke softly that they were going to get her babies. The cat's muscles eased, not relaxed, but no longer braced to bolt. Sheriff Parker backed his SUV to the mud's edge and set the floodlight so its beam poured a pale road across the channel. The beaver mound glistened like a wet, breathing thing. Logan clipped the waist harness, tested the line with 2 hard jerks, and nodded that he was ready. Madison would anchor him with a second rope, while Mike kept watch on the cat and the water level. Parker handed over a waterproof radio already paired with the phone on speaker. On the line, Dr. Harper's voice came through calm and clean. She said to move slowly, talk to the animals, and keep the mother's line of sight if possible. She reminded them that cold kills judgment before it kills muscle. Logan stepped into the channel and felt the rush push at his shins. Even through the suit, the cold knifed up his legs. Madison paid out line, murmuring his distance. 5 paces. 8. 10. He set the plank between the outer ring of sticks and the opening, a dark gap no wider than a backpack, and slid forward on his stomach. Inside, the smell changed to old wood and swamp gas. He clicked his headlamp to its lowest setting. 2 shapes pressed against the rear wall, sodden and shivering. One tried to lift a head, then sagged. He spoke in a slow voice that he was here to help. The closer he crawled, the clearer he saw the problem. Fine wire cinched around the left foreleg of the larger cub, biting into wet fur. The other had a bright blue plastic tie biting the hair above its hock, the tail fouled in a twist of fishing line. He described what he saw. Dr. Harper answered at once. For the wire, she said, he needed to immobilize the limb with one hand, and with the other, slide the blunt side of the trauma shears between skin and loop. Never pull the loop tighter. Cut away from the artery, and expect the animal to jerk on the second snip. Madison's voice carried from behind him, steady and close. She said she had him on tension, and would hold if he needed to retreat. Logan wedged his shoulder against a rib of the lodge and reached for the first cub. The little body was all angles and tremor. He slid his palm under the foreleg, felt the wire biting through fur, and worked the dull blade along the inside. The cub stiffened. He whispered that it would sting and made the cut. The wire popped, and the leg twitched hard. He held on until the tremor ebbed, then snipped the second coil and eased the metal off like a snake shed. Behind him, the water licked higher against the plank. Mike called out that the gate had shifted again, and they needed to hurry. The mother lynx growled toward the marina, a low sound that made Logan's ribs vibrate. He slid to the second cub. The plastic tie had no give. Dr. Harper told him to brace the hock and snip directly through the ratchet head. He found the boxy bulge, pressed the shears hard, and felt the brittle snap. The tie fell away. He unwound the filament line from the tail, careful not to pull hair. Both cubs wheezed with rough, thin sounds that barely counted as mews. Dr. Harper said to check gums. Pale meant hypothermia and shock. He pressed a finger to the larger cub's lip. The color was almost gray. She told him to keep them dry and high, and to get them out now. Logan scooped the first cub to his chest, tucked under his chin to free a hand, and backed along the plank. Madison hauled slack. The mother lynx was there in the reeds, eyes huge, not moving except for the twitch in her cheek. Logan placed the cub into Madison's arms. She wrapped it in a towel lined with a heat pack. He turned back at once for the second. The lodge groaned, a low-wood complaint. He crawled in again, belly scraping against wet sticks, dragged the smaller cub free, and felt the water surge against his elbow. Behind him, Parker swore that the floodlight was picking up oil from the marina's drain. Madison told him to keep the path clear. Logan slid the second cub onto the board and pushed forward. The plank shifted, dipped, then steadied as Madison took weight on the rope. He handed the cub across and helped wrap its body tight. Both bundles twitched, then went strangely limp, the way animals do when their cord drops below the line. He fought the urge to shake them awake. Dr. Harper said they were not gone, they were conserving. She told Madison to hold each bundle against her jacket and keep the heat packs on the chest and armpits. She told Mike to start the truck and blast the heater. She told Logan to check his own fingers before he lost them. The mother lynx stood so close that Logan could see the tiny burrs matted in her whiskers. She stared at the wrapped cubs, then at Logan, and made a small, raw sound. He said out loud that the babies were coming with them, and that she could follow. The cat backed a step, then fell in behind, as if she understood the order. They moved quick but not frantic. Parker led the way with the light, Madison cradled the cubs, Logan flanked with the plank as a shield, and Mike walked rear guard. At the trucks, they set the cubs into the crate lined with blankets and chemical warmers, leaving a gap for air. The mother hovered at the open door, nose working, but did not try to climb in. Madison said softly that they would bring her too, and Mike nodded. He had an extra kennel ready with a sliding latch, so she could stay near without feeling trapped. Dr. Harper's voice sharpened. She said to get moving now, and to keep the cab hot. She would prep warm fluids and a quiet room. Just as Parker shut the floodlight and turned to climb into his SUV, something pale at the edge of the boathouse caught his eye. He stepped over, kicked mud from a stenciled crate, and read the stamp through a smear of algae, the name of the private security company that serviced the marina, followed by a lot number and a line item. Perimeter control hardware. Parker looked back at Mike with a hard expression. He said they had more than traps now. They had a trail. The mother lynx growled at the distant rumble of the gate. Madison slid into the truck with the crate on her lap. Logan slammed the door and told Mike to drive. The heater roared. The cubs' towels trembled with tiny breaths. They pulled out onto the road as the first pink of sunrise touched the treetops, the marina shrinking in the mirror. Parker stayed behind with the crate he had found, phone already to his ear. The road bent toward the highway and the clinic beyond, and the cat in the second kennel kept pace with the truck's rattles, never once taking her eyes off the small shapes in Madison's arms. The wildlife center sat at the edge of the forest, hidden behind a stand of birches that still held frost on their bark. When Mike's truck pulled into the gravel lot, Dr. Harper was already waiting with 2 assistants in scrubs and wool caps. The moment Madison stepped out holding the bundled cubs, the doctor motioned for them to hurry inside. The air inside was warm and thick with antiseptic. A hum of heaters and soft beeping monitors filled the corridor. Dr. Harper cleared a table in the triage room and lifted the first cub with practiced hands. "Get warmed fluids, 120 milliliters," she said to her assistant. "And dry wraps, no direct heat." Logan peeled off his gloves, hands red and trembling. "They were trapped all night," he said quietly. "Wire and zip ties." Dr. Harper nodded without looking up. "You did well getting them out alive." She inserted a small tube into the cub's nose, checking for resistance, then hooked it to a line of warm saline. "Core temperature's dropping," she said softly. "We'll raise it slow. Too fast, and the heart won't keep rhythm." The mother lynx waited in a large holding enclosure adjoining the treatment area. The team had dimmed the lights and placed pine branches across the floor to mimic the woods. She prowled the perimeter, restless but silent. When Madison came near, the lynx stopped pacing, nose pressed against the mesh. Her eyes followed every movement toward the treatment table. Dr. Harper finished stabilizing the smaller cub, then stepped back to let the team weigh and tag them. "Temporary markers only," she said. "We'll release them together once they're ready." The cubs, now swaddled in soft towels, began to twitch their ears. One made a weak chirp that made everyone in the room pause. Madison smiled faintly. "That's the first sound since the water." In the office down the hall, Mike and Parker sat across from each other with coffee that had long gone cold. The sheriff laid the muddy crate from the marina on the desk. "I had it tested," he said. "Same serial batch as the private security outfit Carter uses. They logged an order for wildlife deterrent snares 3 months ago. Claimed it was for raccoons chewing through cables." Mike exhaled. "That's not a mistake. That's negligence." "Or worse," Parker added. "Those traps were industrial-grade wire. Nobody uses that for small animals." He thumbed through printed invoices and photos. "We've also got motion cam footage from the access road, someone hauling spools of fencing in a Carter Marina truck 2 nights before the incident." Mike's jaw tightened, and he tried to shut us down over insurance concerns. Parker leaned back. "I sent it to the prosecutor. They're drafting an order to seize records and shut that dock until inspection. Media's already sniffing around. By afternoon, the story hit local radio. Rangers rescue endangered lynx family from illegal traps near Lake Colburn. Reporters started calling the Wildlife Center for statements. Madison caught one headline on a phone screen inside. "They'll twist it before the truth comes out." Dr. Harper, standing nearby, looked up from the chart. "Then we show them the truth. Quietly. Factually." She glanced through the window at the mother lynx, now crouched low beside her enclosure door. The cubs, nestled under heat lamps, stirred at the sound of her soft growl. Mike walked to the enclosure, unhooking the top partition. "Let's see if she recognizes their scent." He laid the blanket used for the cubs near the mesh. The lynx sniffed it, then released a sound none of them had heard before, a low, trembling call that seemed half roar, half cry. Everyone froze. Then, from the recovery pen, both cubs lifted their heads and answered. The sound was faint but unmistakable, a response from instinct deeper than pain or fear. Madison felt tears sting her eyes. "She knows they're alive." Dr. Harper smiled tiredly. "That's the best medicine they'll get today." As evening settled, Parker received a call from the prosecutor's office. He stepped into the hall, listening, then returned to the group. "Warrants approved. Carter's getting a visit tomorrow morning." Mike nodded, expression hard. "Good. No more traps on that lake." The room quieted again. The heaters hummed, a steady pulse of life. Logan sat against the wall, watching the cubs breathe under their lamps. The mother lynx lay down in her pen, eyes still locked on the table where her young rested. Outside, the wind carried the first flakes of snow across the lot. Inside, for the first time in 24 hours, nobody moved fast. They had done what they could. The rest was waiting. 3 weeks later, the air had shifted again. Snow had melted into cold mist, and the birch branches around the rehab center rattled with early thaw. In the outside enclosure, 2 young lynx cubs sprinted from one log to another, leaping with a clumsy joy that made Madison laugh under her breath. Their fur had grown thick again, marked with the faintest scars on their legs. Their mother watched from the shade, heavier now, her coat shining, her eyes sharp and alert. Dr. Harper noted numbers on a clipboard. "Weight's perfect. Reflexes are back. They're ready." Mike leaned on the fence. "You sure about the release site? I don't want them anywhere near that lake again." Harper nodded. "North ridge of Black Pine Preserve. 20 miles inland. No traffic, no boats, just forest." She looked toward Logan and Madison. "You'll both be there. They'll recognize your scent. It'll make it easier for her to move." The drive out took most of the morning. The crates in the truck bed were covered with heavy canvas, though every so often a paw pressed gently against the mesh inside. Parker followed behind in his SUV, hauling the paperwork that closed the case. The marina was shut down, Carter fined, and the security firm hit with charges for illegal trapping. News crews had lost interest now that the cubs were safe. For the team, that was exactly how they wanted it. They parked at the trailhead under a stretch of gray sky. The forest beyond was thick, quiet, and uncut. The sound of running water came faintly from a creek below. Mike carried one crate, Logan the other. Madison walked beside the mother's carrier, whispering to her though she doubted the words mattered anymore. At a clearing ringed by pines, they stopped. A low wind stirred the needles, scattering the smell of sap and earth. Harper opened her notebook. "Temperature's good, terrain steady. This should do." She looked at them all. "Whenever you're ready." Logan unlatched the first carrier. One cub stepped out cautiously, paws sinking into damp moss. The second followed, more curious, sniffing at the air. They hesitated only until the mother's crate door opened. She emerged like a shadow sliding from the trees, silent, poised, unmistakably wild. The cubs froze, then bounded toward her. She met them halfway, lowering her head until both pressed their faces into her neck. No one spoke. For a few long moments, the forest was nothing but breath and wind. Madison whispered, "They remember." Dr. Harper's voice was soft. "Instinct never forgets." The lynx turned toward the thicker woods. She paused once, looking back over her shoulder. Her eyes met Logan's, then Madison's. There was no fear, only a strange, measured calm, as if she understood what they had done for her family. Then she made a deep, low sound, almost a purr, and led her cubs into the pine shadows. Within seconds, they were gone. For a long time, nobody moved. Finally, Mike exhaled. "That's the best ending we'll ever get." Harper closed her clipboard. "It's not an ending. Just the right place to stop watching." Back at the trucks, Parker handed Mike a folder. "Judge signed the rest this morning. Carter's paying fines and doing public service. They're putting up wildlife safety signs along the marina trail. Your idea." Mike nodded. "Maybe next time, someone will think before setting wire." They loaded the empty crates, the sound of the tailgate closing echoing against the hills. The sky had started to brighten, patches of blue showing through. Madison stood for a moment longer, watching the line of pines where the lynx had vanished. Logan joined her. "You think we'll ever see them again?" She smiled faintly. "Not if we're lucky." He chuckled, understanding. Some things were meant to stay unseen once they were safe. As they drove back toward the road, the forest thinned, sunlight spilling through. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals, and for the first time since that frozen morning on the lake, the world felt balanced again. Behind them, in the deep quiet of the pines, a soft rustle answered the wind, a mother teaching her cubs how to move through the wild, free of wire, free of fear.